Hughes Aircraft Company has always been at the leading edge of technology. From the early days, when Howard Hughes set his first airspeed record of 186 miles an hour in a modified military pursuit plane, to the present, when Hughes satellites and interplanetary space probes ply space at thousands of miles per hour. The years in between have been historic for the company, the nation, and the world. If it is true that Hughes Aircraft Company is an institution, it has in fact been called a national resource, and that an institution is but the lengthened shadow of a man. How did we get where we are? Part of the answer lies in the character of Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes was born on Christmas Eve in 1905. His father, Howard Robard Hughes Sr., was founder and owner of Hughes Tool Company. By 1913, when it was incorporated, the business was making a small fortune for the family from the manufacture of a patented oil drilling bit. The drilling bit revolutionized the oil industry by making oil hidden beneath layers of hard rock accessible. Young Howard Jr. was bright and inventive. Often, he accompanied his father to the tool company, eagerly learning details of the business. As a teenager, he built a ham radio set from parts in his front doorbell. The radio worked so well, it disrupted commercial stations in Houston. In 1922, his mother died, and 2 years later, Howard Sr. died, leaving his 18-year-old son 75% of Hughes Tool Company to be held in trust until Howard reached 21. However, Howard Jr. went to court and so impressed the judge with his knowledge of the company's operations that he was awarded control of the company at age 19. Howard's uncle, Rupert Hughes, was a successful Hollywood screenwriter and novelist. Visits to Uncle Rupert's home in California, where he met film stars and industry giants, generated the young man's interest in the movie business. At age 20, he became a film producer. In 7 years, he produced more than a dozen films, including the classics Hell's Angels, The Front Page, and Scarface. In producing Hell's Angels, 37 real aircraft were used rather than models. This demonstrated the dedication to quality that characterized all of Hughes' ventures, and also demonstrated yet another of Hughes' interests, aviation. Hughes learned to fly in 1927, shortly after arriving in California. And by 1932, had decided to join man's newest challenge to the elements by putting some of his theories about aircraft design to the test. Mr. Hughes bought a Boeing P-12 military pursuit plane to modify for racing. To keep track of expenses, a separate set of accounts was established at the Hughes Tool Company. This was the somewhat inauspicious start of the Hughes Aircraft Company. A rented hangar in Glendale, a war surplus airplane, and a page or two of ledger sheets in the tool company accounting office. The next step was to hire the best designers, engineers, and mechanics available to modify the P-12. Mr. Hughes also provided whatever financial support that was required to make the project successful, strategies that still shape the profile of the Hughes Aircraft Company today. In 1933, the operation expanded to larger quarters in Burbank, and in 1934, the modified P-12 with Howard Hughes at the controls broke the world speed record. But 186 miles per hour did not satisfy Howard Hughes. Starting with a blank sheet of drafting paper, he and his crew designed their own airplane, incorporating every state-of-the-art feature as well as innovations of their own. These included a jet thrust exhaust system and, to reduce drag, fully retractable landing gear, rivets set flush with the skin, and an enclosed engine cowling.
We think it'll be not only faster than any racing plane ever built in this country, but also faster than any pursuit ship or other military plane in any country whatsoever.
They called it the H-1 Racer. And in 1935, with Howard Hughes again at the controls, it set a new world airspeed record of 352 miles per hour. 2 years later, with further modifications, the H-1 racer set another record, flying coast to coast in 7 hours, 28 minutes. That record would stand for 7 years. Hughes' next venture, a record-breaking round-the-world flight, combined two of his long-standing interests, radio and aviation. He was convinced that radio could maintain reliable communications with a flying aircraft, and further, that the airplane could become a safe, rapid mode of public transportation. Starting July 10, 1938, he and a crew of 4 stunned the aviation world, circling the globe in a Hughes-modified Lockheed Lodestar in 3 days, 19 hours.
Aviation's supreme achievement. Time is destroyed and space is humbled. More than 30,000 New Yorkers jammed their way into Floyd Bennett Field to see the epoch-making arrival of Howard Hughes and his companions.
New York welcomed him with a ticker tape parade. While media attention focused on the speed record, Hughes said the trip, not the speed, was important. It proved the feasibility of commercial air travel and air-to-ground radio communications.
Any one of the airline pilots of this nation, with any of the trained Army or Navy navigators and competent radio engineer, in any one of our modern passenger transports, could have done the same thing.
The possibility of continuous radio communications had been theorized by Hughes, but it was a young Hughes engineer, Dave Evans, who devised and designed the equipment to do it. During the flight, Evans spent the entire time at his radio, providing weather information from thousands of miles away. From the radio department that supported Mr. Hughes' record-breaking flights came the technology from which the modern Hughes Aircraft Company would develop. With the company growing rapidly, Hughes sought land to build on, eventually purchasing 390 acres in the Culver City area. As construction began in 1940, Hughes Aircraft received its first government contract. It was for 2 engineering reports on the Hughes bombardment plane, for which the company was paid $50. 5 months later, the United States was at war, and Hughes engineers swung into action with the Army's acceptance of a design for a flexible feed ammunition chute that would not jam. Production began in early 1942 and lasted throughout the war. The feed chute was the first profit-making product of the aircraft division. In addition, 2 military aircraft projects took shape. The XF-11 photo reconnaissance plane and the HK-1 flying boat. The flying boat, a giant troop and equipment transport plane built largely of wood to save strategic war materials, made its historic and only flight in 1947. At the same time, Howard Hughes was making history by proving his long-standing belief that airplanes were a realistic mode of public transportation. In February 1946, he piloted a TWA Constellation full of celebrities from LA to New York on the first non-stop transcontinental passenger flight. The flight took 8 hours, 44 minutes. While the rest of the aircraft division was completing work on the XF-11 prototypes and the flying boat, the radio department began working on an Air Force contract to develop a new concept in military hardware, the guided missile. Work was also progressing in a new electronic technology, radar. Dr. Simon Ramo and Dr. Dean Wooldridge were hired by manager Dave Evans to head these projects. They, in turn, began to aggressively recruit the top scientists and engineers in the country.